Designing is difficult. There are numerous factors to consider, such as who's going to use it, how you will construct it, the materials you need, and most importantly, what will it look like? Designing a jacket is no different from working out the design for a house, car, or electric iron, anything that somebody is going to use. But with a jacket come particular concerns. After all, different people are going to wear the final product, and none of them is exactly the same as the other. They may choose different fabrics, weights, and weaves, and the design has to be good enough for all eventualities. Join us now as we show you how AskOkey designs and prototypes one of its jackets. In this case, our signature double-breasted jacket. AskOkey designs and makes classic menswear. As the world's first digital bespoke tailor, design is critical because the tailor has to work from a pattern, ensuring that the customer receives exactly what he wanted. AskOkey has been producing single-breasted jackets using the digital bespoke process for a couple of years now, and it seemed like the time was right to introduce a double-breasted version.
We'd already done a single-breasted jacket. It was a success, very well received in the marketplace, and I think the next natural step was to do a double-breasted.
All AskOkey jackets are cut and handmade with a drape. The formation of the chest piece with extra fabric on either side, creating an outline that enhances the man's figure and provides optimal mobility. Customers have been asking for the same features in a double-breasted. It starts with proportions, shoulders, chest, weight, and skirts. The aim is to create a vertical line from shoulders to shoes where the jacket and trousers combine in the classic V-shaped configuration. The prof sketched out what he thought the jacket should look like, using photos of classic jackets and his own contemporary take on the shoulders, lapels, buttons, collar, gorge, and other things. And the process was not without its challenges, of course.
Thankfully, we had something to work off of. We already had the single-breasted coat, and we had the pattern for that, so we used that as a building block. That saved us the work of basically starting from the measurement we had. We just extended the shoulders a little bit because I thought for the double-breasted coat, it needs to be a bit more, let's say, it needs to have a bit more oomph. What's the word I'm looking for? It needs to have a lot more presence. And so I had this idea when I walked into that design room. I said, what do I want to achieve in designing this coat? And an idea just popped up in my head. And the idea was this, that you walk into a room and everybody stops what they're doing. This was just sort of this idea that came into mind, that the coat has to be so commanding in its presence that when you walk into a room, everything stops. In other words, a power coat. Not for wallflowers. This is not a subtle jacket. I said we're not going to create a subtle jacket. We want to create a statement jacket. And so we started, of course, with the shoulders. Next thing, and the most critical feature when designing a double-breasted jacket, especially a double-breasted jacket, are the lapels. That is the main story there. It's like the lapels could make or mar a double-breasted jacket. It could communicate 100 different things. You could communicate through the lapels, in terms of the design language or the style language. For a double-breasted, that is the main instrument of communication. So the first thing we decided that it has to have a dominant lapel. It had to have a dominant lapel. So again, the challenge was, how do you not overdo it? And how do you ensure that the balance is right? And that the angle, so for instance, the height of the gorge, the angling of the gorge, all of those things, 1 millimeter here, 2 millimeters there, they make a huge difference.
The next step was to make a pattern. This is where the master tailor comes in with his various tools, trusty pencil and pattern paper. This was possibly the most laborious part of the project and the longest. The prof reckons that he spent about 3 months with the master before he was satisfied that the pattern would actually work. Of course, the master's knowledge and insights were essential because the pattern has to be such that a tailor can take it and produce a jacket from it.
It took us about 3 or 4 different, several hour-long sessions till we finally got a paper pattern that we were satisfied with. Once we got the paper pattern done and it went into the cutting room, of course you go from the paper pattern to the muslin. Muslin is sort of a waistcloth or trial cloth. It's a very thin fabric, just used for basically making trial garments. So once we went from the paper pattern to the muslin, it was sort of like that waiting with bated breath. It's like, well, let's hope this thing doesn't look like a turkey, like a Thanksgiving turkey when it shows up in the muslin, right? So, like there was a lot of suspense. And
the first prototype was in white muslin, not more than a mock-up really, to show the pattern in 3 dimensions. It doesn't look like much, but it's the basis for making the tweaks and doing the adjustments that will give us the final product. The next step was to run up a prototype in full cloth, including the basted drape, canvas, chest piece, and collar.
When it finally came out in the muslin, it was a white piece of cloth. We were quite pleasantly surprised by the proportions, by the balance. And, we were quite happy it came out. But again, you still don't know because the muslin is just a piece of cloth. There's no basting, there's nothing. It's just cloth lying on your body. But that was just to check for the balance, to check for the styling. So we were satisfied enough with the muslin fitting that we moved to the basted fitting. Basted fitting is where you have the actual garment. Basically it's a waistcloth, but a real cloth this time. You construct the facings and maybe use a different color fabric or a different type of fabric to construct the back of the coat. So we were able to put together the basted fitting. Sleeveless, of course, at this stage, it was completely sleeveless. Again, we were still checking for the balance in the body. Weren't worried about, sleeves are sleeves, you can hang them, later. So we still wanted to sort of get that basted fitting to check for the balance in the body, proportions, and then to sort of see, at this point, it was just the basting is just basically attached, it's not sewn on, to see what the shape of the garment would look like once you have the innards in, the chest piece, the canvas, and all of that stuff, and it's been pasted. So we started to, at that basted stage, we started to get a sense of what this thing really could look like. And I was excited. That was where I really started getting excited because I could now start to see where this was going. You could now actually start to see this thing emerge, this thing go from an idea to an actual garment. And so we made a few changes at the basted stage. I don't remember making any stylistic changes. I think at that point we had nailed down the styling and the balance of the coat. It was just a question of maybe the armhole. I wanted a bit snugger or and so on and so forth, but very minimal.
Now, the prof often says that if you can nail the collar and the armholes, that is half the battle.
The 2 things that anchor the jacket to your body, that lock it in, are the armhole and the collar. These need to be spot on. They are absolutely non-negotiable.
So the collar took some time to get right. It has to sit still regardless of what you do with your arms, resting on the shoulders. The master and his team have clearly managed to do this. The armholes have to be oval, not round, and need to be high enough for the chest and back to drape. The fabric is cut large in the chest piece to provide for the drape, the crease, that is at the side of each piece next to the sleeve heads. The chest piece is hand-basted, taking hours. In fact, producing an AskOkey jacket, single or double-breasted, takes 8 days because of the amount of handwork. Now the test piece is still minus its arms, but the front and back drape are in place, and it's ready for decisions about the buttonholes and button placement and final finishing. There may be some work to do on the chest and back to give them a little bit more drape, but nothing major. Then the sleeves will be attached and the jacket will be ready for a final fitting and check. The pattern may be modified, but probably not. The fabric for the final product was chosen, and the design, pattern, and test of fit were rendered into a final jacket. An AskOkey jacket involves considerable handwork, and it takes a tailor about 8 days to make.
So how much handwork is involved in a typical AskOkey jacket, or generally a bespoke jacket? A lot. Just let's start from the top. So I mean, I'm a figures guy. I'm a financier, so I always like to start working with numbers. So your average bespoke coat takes about 60 hours to make, okay? Some even could take up to 80 hours. I mean, there's some people who are really crazy anal. Some tailors like are very, very detailed and they take up to 80 hours. But I'd say on average, for a well-made, bench-made bespoke jacket, you're looking at 60 hours minimum, okay? Most of that is handwork. A lot of it is just literally, because think about it, this is a garment that is basically being molded around a specific pattern, right? So you're talking, we're done with cutting the pattern and then sort of cutting the cloth, and basically it's in the hands of the sewers and sort of basically, assembling the whole garment together. It's very intricate work, as you will see in some of the reels in the documentary. Everything is hand put together. The chest piece, the canvas goes in, the collar, everything is attached by hand. I'm not a tailor, so I can't sort of, speak to the specific techniques but I mean, I'm in the workshop all the time and I see them, and everything is essentially, the collar is hand felled, the lapel is hand padded. If you turn the lapel over this way, you can see sort of the padding, the stitching on the back of it. And you can always tell how intricately you could tell the level of the basting or work done on the coat. If you turn this over, this is a little trick that I learned a long time ago. You can look at these stitches and see how close they are to each other, right? If they're very, very close to each other, right, that's a lot of work, because remember, each of these is just one stitch. So some, they kind of sew them sparsely, and the idea there, or the corollary there, is that you're not going to get this roll if it's not. The more intricate the padding, right, the hand padding, the more of this roll you're going to get, because the canvas is just going to be much more rigid, because the canvas runs all the way into the lapel, right? So the more stitches you have in there, it just sort of stiffens the canvas, and it gives you that beautiful roll that never allows the cloth to collapse completely and become flat. Same with the chest. To get that nice bloom, right, and for it to stay bloomed and to keep that shape, again, you need those very tight, very, very tight stitching in the canvas and the chest piece. Again, depending on the kind of coat you're making and the, I suppose, the style of it, it takes anywhere from, 50 to 60 to 70 hours.
The process has been long and not without a few bumps in the road, but ultimately successful. The prototype is ready, the pattern has been fixed, enabling the tailors to run off bespoke jackets for customers. Using AskOkey's digital bespoke process, the design and pattern can be adapted to every man's height, waistline, breadth, and other dimensions. Now that you've seen how we design and prototype one of our jackets, and in fact you've seen how the tailors put together the pattern and the test of fit product, why not consider ordering one for yourself? It's very, very easy. All you have to do is go to the website, choose a product, choose a fabric, choose some of the features like the number of buttons, the position of the pockets, enter your measurements, and press the button. Our tailor will make a pattern for you, will ship you a test of fit, and you try it on, take some photographs of yourself, and we'll call you and talk to you about your feedback and any adjustments we can make. And then, within a couple of weeks, you'll have a final product shipped right to your home. In any case, thanks for watching, and we'll see you again soon.